In earlier videos, we've talked about the role of dominant chords and how they lead the listener to want to hear the resolution going back to the tonic chord. So for example, in the key of C, we would have a G chord built on the dominant degree, and we have that leading tone, the B natural, that leads us back to want to resolve to the 1. Let me just refresh your memory. So in the key of C, we would have C, G, C, if we were going to go 1, 5, 1, tonic, dominant, tonic. So there's that strong pull for resolution, and we have that root movement of a perfect fourth going up from the 5 up to 1, and that's the strongest kind of root movement you can have that gives us a feeling of home base and landing on a home chord. So root movement of a fourth is very strong, and a leading tone draws us to the 1. And that's the basic role of a dominant chord. But we can also have what are called secondary dominant chords. And what they do is they make a note other than the tonic sound like the tonic. And they do this by creating that root movement of a perfect fourth of a major chord going to a major chord with a leading tone leading us up to what we perceive to be a tonic, although it's not really the 1 chord in the key. Let me give you an example. Here's our first little chord progression. We're in the key of C. Let me play it for you. So we have 1, 4, 2, 5, 1, and they're all unaltered in the key of C. Let's look at this in the score. I'm going to hide the piano for now. And we can see here that it's just a basic 1, 4, 2, 5, 1 progression. I'll play it for you again. C, F, D minor, G, C. But what we can do is we can make that 2 minor chord major, and that then acts as a secondary dominant with that F sharp leading us to the G. Let me hide this and I'll play it for you, and then we'll look at it. So there's a subtle difference there, but it's an important nuance. Raising the 3rd degree on the 2 chord makes it major, so that D minor chord with the F sharp becomes major, and that F sharp acts as a leading tone, drawing the listener to expect resolution to the G. That's what it resolves to over here. The D triad now acts as a secondary dominant, leading to another chord other than the tonic, so it leads us to the 5 chord. So we now refer to this D major as the 5 of 5, since it leads us to the 5 chord. So it's notated like this usually with the Roman numerals, 5 of 5, and we use the actual phrase 5 of 5 because it's leading us, it's acting as a dominant chord leading us to this one, temporarily acting as a tonic sounding chord until we actually land on the real tonic. Let's go to our next example here. I'm going to play you this. So still in the key of C, we have 1, 3, 6, 2, 5, 1, C, E minor, A minor, D minor, G, C. So the same process can be applied to any naturally occurring minor chords in any key, major or minor. So let's look at how we can apply this to the 3 chord here. We can make that major, and then it'll act as a secondary dominant leading us to the 6 chord. Again, let me hide this, and I'll play it for you, and then we'll look at it. And let's look at that. So we see here that the E minor has become major by raising the 3rd degree from a G to a G sharp. So by raising the 3rd degree of the 3 chord, it acts as a secondary dominant leading to the 6 chord. And we call this 5 of 6 because it's leading to the 6. It's acting as a dominant going to the 6 chord. The 2 chord has also been made major, acting as a secondary dominant, or 5 of 5, like we saw in the previous example. So let me play it for you one more time. So you really hear when it lands on the 6 chord, it sounds like we've landed home because that 5 chord is leading us there. You could stop right there and you'd have a sense of being at a home base, although in this case it's only a temporary one. Let's go to the next example. And again, I'll hide this and I'll play it for you. and this is a very common chord progression. We have 1, 6, 2, 5, 1. So we're in the key of F in this case, 1 flat, just for variety. The 6th chord can be altered to major, and it would then act as a secondary dominant leading to the 2 chord. So let's look at that, and it's a duplicate right now. I want to make the change ourselves. All we need to do is raise the 3rd degree up. So in that 6th chord in F, we're at D minor. We want that F to become an F sharp. So then we'll hear the whole effect now of the secondary dominant just by changing that one note. That F sharp is going to draw us to want to resolve to the G, the 2 chord in F. Let's go to the beginning of that. So a simple change of one note. Let's continue on and see how this can be applied in minor. Here's a simple basic chord pattern in minor. We're in C minor now, and I'm going from 1 to 4, and in C minor the 1 chord is minor and the 4 chord is minor. So the same thing applies to minor keys. In C minor, the 1 chord can act as a secondary dominant by making it major. By doing this, the E natural acts as a leading tone, leading us to the F minor, which we have here. So I'll play this for you and you'll hear the two of them together. So it really creates a dominant feel by having that leading tone going up to the F. So let's look at another longer example in C minor. And here we have 1 going to the 2 chord, which is 2 diminished, going to 5, and then the 1 minor. And then we have the 2 diminished here altered, turned into a 5 of 5, leading us to the G minor, the 1, and then the 2 diminished, and then the 5 being made a secondary dominant, although in this case it's a primary dominant because it does lead us back to the 1 chord. And in minor keys, it's very, very common to have the 5 chord have the 3rd raised up to a natural 3rd so that you get that leading tone resolution and it acts as a real dominant function. And that's where the harmonic minor scale comes from. Because in C harmonic minor, as you'll recall, we would have the B natural. So that lends itself to having a real dominant function on the 5 chord. Anyway, let's listen to this. So you really hear that sense of resolution at the end of landing finally on home base. So here we have a couple of different secondary dominant chords in C minor. The 2 diminished chord becomes a secondary dominant that leads us to the 5 minor chord, and that's over here. And it's notated as 5 of 5, but you'll notice that's a lowercase 5 over there because that is a minor 5 chord. And then the 5 minor chord becomes major over here with the large case V, creating the leading tone that brings us back to the 1 minor chord. So secondary dominants apply in minor keys as well. I want to switch briefly to a graphic. So here we have the C major triads, the diatonic triads, with their secondary dominant chords before them. So before the D minor, we would get an A triad. Before the E minor, we would get a B major triad. Before the F major, we would get a C major triad. Before the G major, we would get a D major triad. Before the A minor, we would get an E major triad. And the 7th chord isn't listed here because the 7th chord being diminished acts as a dominant function already, leading us back to the 1 chord. So let me just play this and show you what it sounds like. So you really hear all the 5-1 resolutions, that strong root movement of a 4th. Now I'm going to end off with a little foreshadowing of what's going to come in the next video. Things are going to get a lot more exciting. We're going to look at 7th chords. We haven't talked about this yet, but we're going to get to it. And basically there are different types of 7th chords, which we'll get into. But dominant 7th chords really add to this cadential or cadence-like effect of strong resolution. And I'll just give you a little taste of what's to come. I'm going to open up another graphic here. And basically, here's the secondary dominant chords, same thing, but with 7th chords. And what that means is to make a 7th chord, we add the 7th degree on to the triad. So basically, this creates an interval of a minor 7th between the root and the 7th degree. We add an interval of a minor 3rd up from the 5th degree. So D minor, we would have the A triad, A, C sharp, E, but we add on a G natural, making it an A7 chord. Same thing for B7. We add on that A natural, which is the seventh, a minor seventh above B. And then C7, we add a B flat going to the F chord there. Let me play you what these sound like, and you'll hear the richness and fullness and the increased sort of drama of the dominant leading to the resolution of the perceived tonic chord. So we're going to get into this in more detail in the next video, but basically, just to give you a little foreshadowing again, with the dominant 7 chords, you have the tension of the E resolving up to the F, but you also have the 7th, the B flat, resolving down to the A. So you get some nice little stepwise movement, and you get the interval of a tritone, that E natural and B flat, and that resolves up to an F and an A. So for example, or... So real nice feeling of resolution. But that's to come in the next video, 7th chords. Stay tuned, see you for more then.